in the quiet town of Fairfax, Virginia. The night was still, the only sounds being the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves. Maya Johnson, a poised woman in her 30s, drove her sleek black SUV through suburban streets, her mind focused on the mission ahead. As an undercover CIA agent, she had spent months gathering intelligence on a local drug trafficking ring, and tonight was a culmination of her efforts as she approached a seemingly innocuous intersection. She slowed down, her instincts finely tuned from years of training. She came to a complete stop at the stop sign, her eyes scanning the surroundings. Just as she turned left onto a side street, flashing blue and red lights illuminated her rear view mirror. The siren's wail pierced calm the night, but Maya remained unfazed. She had faced far worse than a routine traffic stop. With a steady hand, she guided her vehicle to the side of the road, turned off the engine, and retrieved her license and registration from the glove compartment. The patrol car parked behind her, and 2 officers stepped out, their movements deliberate and confident. Officer Jake Thompson, tall and imposing, approached her window first, followed closely by his partner, Officer Ryan Mitchell, who was shorter but equally intimidating. "Good evening, ma'am," Thompson said, his voice dripping with authority. "Do you know why I pulled you over tonight?" Maya met his gaze, her expression calm. "No, officer. I wasn't speeding, and I stopped at the intersection." Thompson smirked, a condescending look crossing his face. "Actually, you failed to stop at that sign back there. That's a moving violation." Maya's brow furrowed slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I'm certain I stopped, officer." "License and registration," Thompson interrupted, his tone hardening. Maya handed him the documents, her movements slow and deliberate, aware of the tension in the air. As Thompson examined her papers, Officer Mitchell, who had been lingering near the back of her vehicle, suddenly called out, "Hey, Jake, you might want to take a look back here." Thompson straightened, passing Maya's documents back without a word. "Stay in the car," he ordered, turning to join his partner at the trunk of her SUV. Maya's heart raced, not from fear, but from a sharp instinct that warned her something was amiss. She watched through her side mirror as the 2 officers exchanged glances, their demeanor shifting. Thompson returned to her window, his expression grim. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Maya tilted her head slightly, her voice calm but questioning. "May I ask why?" "We've got reason to believe you're in possession of illegal substances," Thompson replied, his tone clipped. "Illegal substances?" Maya echoed, her brow arching. "I think you made a mistake." "Let's see about that," Thompson said, gesturing for her to exit. Mitchell stood by the back of her vehicle, a smug grin plastered on his face. Suppressing a sigh, Maya opened the door and stepped out, her movements unhurried. She stood with her hands at her sides, watching as Mitchell theatrically lifted her trunk, revealing a small unmarked bag sitting conspicuously near the edge. "There it is," Mitchell said with mock surprise. "What do you know?" "A bag of powdery goodness." Maya's eyes flicked the bag and then back to the officers, her face unreadable. Inside, her mind raced. The bag hadn't been there when she left her house. She was sure of it. This was a setup. Thompson moved closer, his smirk widening. "Anything you want to tell us, ma'am?" Maya's lips curved into a faint smile, a calculated expression that conveyed neither fear nor guilt. "I'll save my comments for the appropriate setting." Thompson chuckled, clearly interpreting her calm as arrogance. "Oh, you'll have your chance. You're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute." As Mitchell moved to cuff her, Maya allowed it, her gaze steady and unflinching. "You're making a big mistake," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet intensity that made Mitchell hesitate for a moment before snapping the cuffs into place. "Yeah, we'll see," Thompson said, leading her toward the squad car. "Let's see how confident you are in front of the judge." As they drove away, Maya gazed out the window, her mind already spinning through her options. The officers thought they had scored an easy arrest, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. The ride to the station was shrouded in tense silence, the only sounds being hum of the engine and the crackle of the police radio. Maya sat in the back seat, her hands cupped behind her, her expression neutral. The fluorescent glow of passing streetlights painted fleeting shadows across her face, but her gaze remained fixed on the road ahead. Inwardly, her thoughts were sharp and deliberate, replaying every moment of the encounter like a puzzle being assembled piece by piece. Thompson glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his lips curling into a faint smirk. "You don't seem too worried," he said, breaking the silence. "Should I be?" Maya replied, her tone steady. Thompson chuckled, shaking his head. "You're either brave or stupid. I've seen a lot of people act tough, but it never lasts long in the holding cell." Maya didn't respond. She knew men like Thompson, those who abuse their power, bending the rules to their advantage. For now, she let him believe he was in control. That illusion wouldn't last. The station was quiet when they arrived, the night shift officers lounging behind their desks, sipping coffee and chatting in low voices. Thompson and Mitchell led Maya inside, the fluorescent lights casting an unforgiving glare on the scuffed linoleum floors. "Got ourselves a big one tonight," Thompson announced, his voice loud and brash. The other officers glanced up, their interest piqued. Mitchell tossed a bag of powder onto the counter with a theatrical flip. "Caught her red-handed," he added, looking smug. Maya remained silent, her gaze sweeping the room. She noted the placement of every camera, the layout of the desks, and the casual camaraderie among the officers. This was a small station, the kind where everyone knew everyone, a network of shared secrets and unspoken codes. They guided her to a fingerprinting station, where Thompson removed the cuffs in motion for her to place her hands on the ink pad. She complied without a word, her movements calm and deliberate. The officer working the station, a younger man with tired eyes, hesitated as he glanced at her, sensing something was off. "Name?" he asked, his tone almost apologetic. "Maya Johnson," she replied evenly. "Occupation?" Maya hesitated for a brief moment, considering her answer. "Consultant," she said finally, vague enough to pass scrutiny, but true enough to avoid outright deception. The younger officer nodded and continued typing, his unease evident. Thompson and Mitchell, however, were oblivious, laughing quietly as they leaned against the counter, enjoying the show. "You got a smart mouth," Thompson said, his tone darkening. "Let's see how funny you are after a night in lockup." Maya's cell was cold and dimly lit, the metal bench bolted to the wall, offering little comfort. She sat on the bench, her back straight, her posture unyielding. The door slammed shut behind her, echoing through the quiet corridor. Thompson lingered for a moment, watching her with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "You don't look like the type to get mixed up in this kind of thing," he said conversationally. "But don't worry, the courts love a good sob story. Maybe they'll go easy on you." Maya tilted her head slightly, her gaze locking on to his. "Or maybe they'll see through yours." Thompson muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving her alone in the cell. Maya leaned back against the cold metal wall, exhaling slowly. She knew her next steps had to be precise. She wasn't just fighting for her own freedom. She was about to expose something much bigger. The quiet of the cell was broken only by the faint hum of the station's HVAC system. Maya waited, her patience born of years in the field. She knew her absence would be noticed soon enough, and when it was, there would be questions. Her team would find her. They always did in the break room. Thompson and Mitchell sat back with steaming mugs of coffee, their laughter filling the small space. "She thinks she's untouchable," Mitchell said, shaking his head. "Did you see her face?" Not even a flicker of panic. "Yeah. Well, that'll change," Thompson replied, a smirk play at his lips. "She's just another name in the system now. Nobody's going to dig too deep." Meanwhile, Maya closed her eyes, her breathing steady. The hours ticked by, but she didn't sleep. Every minute was another step closer to the moment when everything would come crashing down. The storm was coming, and Maya was its quiet eye. A pale sliver of dawn filtered through the narrow, high-placed window of Maya's holding cell, casting a muted glow on the cold concrete walls. The station was coming to life, the day shift officers beginning their routines. Maya listened carefully, noting the distinct tones and footsteps, little tells that revealed more about the people working there. A loud buzz signaled the unlocking of the cell block door, followed by heavy boots echoing down the corridor. Maya didn't flinch as Officer Mitchell appeared in front of her cell, holding a clipboard and wearing his usual smirk. "Morning, sunshine," he said, his voice dripping with mock cheerfulness. "Sleep okay, or was the cot not soft enough for you?" Maya met his gaze without a word, her silence unsettling him more than he'd care to admit. He shifted his weight slightly, glancing down at his clipboard. "You got a bail hearing this afternoon," he said, tapping the paper with his pen. "But between you and me, I wouldn't get your hopes up. Judges around here don't take too kindly to drug traffickers." "Good to know," Maya replied softly. Mitchell frowned, the confidence in his smirk faltering for a split second. He cleared his throat and stepped back. "Enjoy your breakfast," he muttered before turning on his heel and walking away. Maya leaned back against the wall, her gaze following him as he disappeared down the hallway. The cracks in their facade were starting to show. All she needed was a little more time to AT the front desk. Officer Alex Carter, young and eager, watched Mitchell stride through the station. Something about the whole situation didn't sit right with him, but he kept his mouth shut. In this station, questioning senior officers wasn't just frowned upon. It was dangerous. Back in her cell, Maya made her move. Her hands rested casually in her lap, but her sharp eyes were trained on the camera position outside her cell. She waited until the hallway was clear, then shifted slightly on the bench. Hidden in the hem of her jacket was a small, inconspicuous tracker, standard issue for CIA operatives in the field. She pressed her hand against the fabric, triggering the device with a barely perceptible click. The tracker sent a silent signal, a beacon that would reach her team within moments in the break room. Thompson and Mitchell continued their coffee break, oblivious of the storm brewing just beyond their understanding. "She's probably sitting in there thinking we're going to crack," Thompson said, shaking his head. "They always think they can talk their way out of it." "Yeah, well, she's in for a rude awakening," Mitchell replied. "This case is a slam dunk. We got the drugs, the arrest report, and no witnesses." As the day wore on, the tension in the station began to rise. Maya could feel it, an almost imperceptible shift in the air. She knew her team was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Officer Carter's footsteps echoed down the hall again, slower this time. He paused outside her cell, his expression conflicted. "Miss Johnson," he said quietly, his voice low, "did you really consent to the search of your car?" Maya tilted her head slightly, studying him. "What do you think, Officer Carter?" He swallowed hard. "I'm just doing my job," he said defensively. "And what is your job exactly?" Maya pressed. "To follow orders? To look the other way when you know something's wrong." Carter's jaw tightened, his eyes darting down the hallway. "You don't understand how things work around here." "I understand more than you think," Maya replied, her gaze unwavering. "I know what it's like to feel trapped, to think you don't have a choice." "But you do, Carter. You always have a choice." Carter walked away, but her words followed him like a shadow. He returned to his desk, his fingers hovering over his keyboard. He stared at the list of cases tied to Thompson and Mitchell, his stomach twisting with each new name he read. Finally, he made a decision. Carter opened a secure email channel and typed a message, his fingers moving faster as his resolve solidified. He attached the case files he had found along with a note. "To whom it may concern, there's something wrong in this station. I don't know who else to turn to. Please help." He hit send, his heart pounding as the message disappeared into the void. In the break room, Thompson leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee. "You notice Carter acting weird today?" he asked Sullivan. "Kid looks like he's seen a ghost," Sullivan replied, shaking his head. "Probably overthinking things," Thompson said dismissively. "Fresh out of the academy. They always get jumpy around the first big case." "Yeah, well, let's hope he doesn't start asking too many questions," Thompson said, his tone darkening. As the afternoon wore on, a nondescript black sedan pulled into the lot outside the station. Inside the car, Maya's team prepared for their next move. They had intercepted Carter's email exactly as planned, and now they had what they needed to proceed. "Let's make this clean," the team leader said, adjusting his tie. "No unnecessary disruptions. We need to expose this from the inside." As they stepped out of the car, the sun glinted off their badges. The station buzzed with activity, but the atmosphere shifted as the agents entered. Officer Carter's laughter died down, replaced by hushed whispers and furrowed brows. Agent Daniel Price, the lead investigator, approached the front desk, his eyes scanning the room with quiet authority. "We need access to your records and holding cells immediately," he said, his tone steady and clipped. The desk sergeant hesitated, his brow furrowing as he exchanged glances with nearby officers. "What's this about?" he asked warily. "Federal investigation," Price replied. "We need to speak with Officers Thompson and Mitchell." The sergeant hesitated again, but ultimately gestured toward the hallway. "Fine. Follow me." From his desk, Carter watched the scene unfold, his palms slick with sweat. He could see the cracks forming in his facade, the tension in Mitchell's shoulders. The once confident duo now looked more like cornered animals. "Officers Thompson and Mitchell," Price said, his voice cutting through the air. "We need to speak with you." Thompson tried to play it cool, forcing a smirk. "What's this about?" "We got nothing to hide." "Good," Price replied. "Then you won't mind answering a few questions." The room fell silent as the agents led the two officers toward the interrogation room. Maya watched from the station's entrance, her heart racing as the storm she had waited for finally arrived. Inside the cramped interrogation room, Thompson and Mitchell sat at a small metal table, their postures stiff. Agent Price stood across from them, his hands resting on a stack of documents. "Do you want to start with the arrest report, or should we jump straight to the Planet evidence?" Price asked, his tone measured. Mitchell flinched, his eyes darting toward Thompson. "We don't know what you're talking about," Thompson said firmly, his voice laced with defiance. Price didn't flinch. Instead, he opened a folder, pulling out a series of printed photos. He slid them across the table, one by one. Images from the station security cameras, showing Thompson and Mitchell holding the unmarked bag before Maya's car was searched. "That doesn't prove anything," Thompson said, his jaw tightening. "Really?" Price leaned forward slightly. "Because these timestamps show otherwise. And we have audio recordings courtesy of Miss Johnson's hidden surveillance device capturing your little conversation about how easy it would be to frame her." Mitchell paled, gripping the edge of the table. "You can't use that. That's entrapment." Price smirked, shaking his head. "No, it's justice. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. We've pulled records from your past arrests, dozens of cases with eerily similar patterns. All of them are under review. But let me make one thing clear. You're not walking out of here today." Thompson's bravado began to crumble, his shoulders sagging. Mitchell buried his face in his hands, the weight of their actions finally hitting him. Meanwhile, Maya stood near the station's entrance, watching as Thompson and Mitchell were let out in handcuffs. Their once smug expressions were replaced by defeat, their eyes downcast as they were escorted past their colleagues. The station buzzed with quiet murmurs, officers exchanging stunned glances as the reality of the situation sank in. Agent Price approached Maya, his expression neutral but respectful. "We got everything we need," he said. "Your work here is done." Maya nodded, her composure unbroken. "Good. Make sure it sticks." "It will," Price assured her. As Maya stepped outside, the crisp air hit her face, carrying with it a sense of finality. The weight she had carried for weeks began to lift, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of knowing justice had been served. In the days that followed, the fallout from the investigation sent shockwaves through the town. Thompson and Mitchell's arrests were headline news, their faces plastered across every screen. The charges against Maya were formally dropped, and the cases tied to the officers' misconduct were reopened. The station underwent a massive overhaul, with several officers resigning under scrutiny as higher-ups scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Officer Carter, now viewed as a whistleblower, received mixed reactions from his colleagues, but he held his head high, knowing he had made the right choice. Weeks later, Maya sat on a park bench, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. The autumn leaves rustled around her, their vibrant colors a reminder of change. She had returned to her quiet life, her mission complete, but the experience lingered in her mind. Agent Price joined her, his presence a rare moment of camaraderie. "You could have handled this differently," he said, sitting down beside her. Maya smirked, taking a sip of her coffee. And missed the look on their faces? No thanks. Price chuckled softly. You've got a knack for making things memorable. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the weight of their work momentarily forgotten. For Maya, the storm had passed, but the impact of her actions would ripple on, ensuring that justice prevailed, at least for now. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours of Thompson and Mitchell's arrest, every local and national outlet had picked up the story. Police corruption exposed. FBI takes down dirty cops in Fairfax. Footage of the officers being let out in handcuffs played on a loop, their faces grim, stripped of the arrogance they had worn so openly. Maya's name was kept out of the media intentionally, a calculated decision by her team. The focus needed to remain on the systemic issues at the station and the actions of the officers involved, not on her role in uncovering the truth. She preferred it that way. She had no interest in fame, only results. In a sterile, windowless interrogation room at a federal detention center, Thompson and Mitchell sat across from their lawyers. Their arrogance melted into desperation. The charges against them were overwhelming. Falsifying reports, planting evidence, and abusing their authority in dozens of cases. "This is bad," Mitchell muttered, his voice shaking. "They've got everything, audio, video, the files. What do we do?" Thompson asked, his usual confidence waning. "We fight it," he said finally, though the conviction in his voice was weak. Their lawyers weren't optimistic. The mountain of evidence was insurmountable, and public outrage had already tipped the scales against them. Plea bargains were their only chance of avoiding decades in prison. Back at the Fairfax Police Department, the fallout continued. Internal investigations revealed more officers involved in similar practices, and resignations poured in as higher-ups scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. The chief of police held a press conference, emphasizing a commitment to transparency and reform, but the damage to the department's reputation was already done. Keller found himself at the center of attention, both praised and ostracized for his role in bringing corruption to light. Some colleagues avoided him, their loyalty to the old guard still intact, while others quietly expressed their support. Keller didn't care. He had done what was right, and that was enough. A week after her release, Maya met Keller in a small diner on the outskirts of town. The atmosphere was quiet, almost serene, a stark contrast to the chaos they had both endured. Keller sat across from her, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I wasn't sure you'd show up," he admitted, his voice low. Maya raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You earned this conversation. Not many people would have done what you did." Keller looked down at the table, his expression conflicted. I couldn't keep looking the other way. But honestly, I don't know if it made a difference. The department's still a mess, and people like Thompson and Mitchell, there are more of them out there. "It made a difference to the people they hurt," Maya replied firmly. "And it made a difference to you. Don't underestimate that." Her words seemed to ease some of his tension, and for the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. "What about you?" he asked. "What happens now?" Maya leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "Now I move on to the next mission. There's always another fight." Months later, Thompson and Mitchell stood in court, their fates sealed. They pled guilty to multiple charges, each receiving a lengthy prison sentence. Their careers were over, their reputations destroyed. For the first time, they faced the consequences of their actions. The cases they had built on lies were overturned, and innocent people were exonerated. Community leaders rallied for deeper reforms, using the scandal as a catalyst for change. In a quiet moment, Maya sat in her sparsely furnished apartment, packing a small bag. A dossier lay open on the table, filled with details of her next assignment. She glanced at it briefly before closing it, her mind already focused on the road ahead. The phone on the counter buzzed, and she picked it up. Agent Price's voice came through the line. "Ready for the next one?" Maya smiled faintly. "Always." As she stepped out into the crisp evening air, the door clicked shut behind her. The fight wasn't over. Not for her, not for the people she worked to protect. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Justice had been served, and the truth had prevailed. And that, for her, was enough.